The next morning, Samarth's friends found him half buried in the dirt outside an abandoned mansion in Goa, India. His fingernails were broken, his clothes were covered in mud, and clutched tightly in his hand was a phone containing a photograph that should have been impossible to take. A photograph that showed Samarth standing inside the house, at the exact same time he was lying unconscious outside. If you enjoy horror stories, don't forget to subscribe to Vireon Horror. And now, prepare yourself for a story that might make you think twice before entering an abandoned house after dark. Deep in Goa, India, there stands an old Portuguese mansion that locals refuse to visit after sunset. People call it the DeMelo House, and according to local legends, the dead still live there. 3 years earlier, 19-year-old Samarth was on vacation in Goa with 5 of his closest friends. One night, they gathered around a bonfire on the beach. The waves crashed against the shore as they shared ghost stories. Eventually, the conversation turned to haunted places. That was when Rahul mentioned the DeMelo House. The mood changed instantly. According to local rumors, 2 brothers had once lived there. One night, a violent argument ended with one brother stabbing the other to death. The victim was supposedly buried beneath a giant tree behind the mansion. Months later, the surviving brother was found dead inside the house. No one knew how he died. Since then, strange things had been reported there. Screams, footsteps, shadowy figures watching from the windows. Most locals refused to go near the property after dark. Samarth laughed. "Sounds like another ghost story." Rahul smirked. "If you're so brave, go there tonight. Take a picture inside, and stay for 5 minutes." The group cheered. Without hesitation, Samarth accepted. As everyone laughed, an old fisherman who had been sitting nearby slowly approached them. His expression was serious. He looked directly at Samarth. "Don't go there." The laughter faded. "Why?" Samarth asked. The old man hesitated. Then he said something that made everyone uncomfortable. "Because people who enter that house never come back alone." A cold silence followed, but Samarth simply smiled. At 11 that night, he left on his scooter. At first, everything seemed normal. But the farther he traveled from town, the stranger things became. The roads grew empty. His phone signal vanished. And then, the forest became completely silent. No insects, no birds, no wind. Nothing. 20 minutes later, he finally saw it. The DeMelo House stood alone at the end of a dirt road. Broken windows stared into the darkness. A massive dead tree leaned over the roof like a giant shadow. For a moment, Samarth felt something he hadn't expected. Fear. Real fear. Still, he stepped through the rusted gate. The challenge had begun, and he had no idea that something inside the house was already waiting for him. The rusted gate slammed shut behind Samarth. The sound echoed through the darkness. He froze. For a moment, he considered turning around and leaving. But then he remembered the challenge. It was only 5 minutes. 5 minutes inside the house. Then he could leave. Taking a deep breath, he pulled out his phone and switched on the flashlight. The front door creaked open with a gentle push. The smell hit him immediately. Rotting wood, mold, and something else. Something that smelled like death. The beam of light moved across the hallway. Dust covered everything. Old furniture sat untouched. Spider webs stretched across the ceiling. Yet despite years of abandonment, the house didn't feel empty. It felt occupied. Samarth stepped farther inside. Every footstep echoed through the mansion. Then he noticed something strange. The walls were covered with faded paintings of faces. Dozens of them. Men, women, children. But every pair of eyes had been scratched out, as if someone had deliberately destroyed them. A chill ran down his spine. Trying to ignore it, he pulled out his phone. He needed proof that he had entered the house. He opened the camera app, and instantly felt his stomach drop. 2 dark figures were standing directly behind him. Their shapes were blurry, almost human, but definitely there. Samarth spun around. The hallway was empty. Nothing. No one. His heart pounded in his chest. Slowly, he looked back at the screen. The figures were gone. Just a glitch, he whispered. At least that's what he wanted to believe. A few minutes later, he reached the end of a long corridor. That's when he heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming from upstairs. Step. 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 Samarth looked toward the ceiling. The sound stopped. Then silence returned. Suddenly his phone vibrated. A notification appeared. New photo saved. Samarth frowned. He hadn't taken any pictures. With trembling hands, he opened the gallery. The color drained from his face. There was a new photograph. In the picture, he was standing in the hallway, looking directly at the camera. But someone else had taken the photo, because his entire body was visible. The photo couldn't exist. He was alone. At least, he thought he was. Before he could process what he was seeing, another sound came from deeper inside the house. A whisper. Very faint. Very distant. Leave. Samarth held his breath. The voice came again, this time closer. Leave. The flashlight flickered. Once. Twice. Then everything went dark. For 3 terrifying seconds, he stood in complete darkness. When the flashlight finally came back on, someone was standing at the far end of the corridor. A tall figure, motionless, watching him. Samarth couldn't make out the face, but he knew one thing. It hadn't been there before. The figure slowly raised one arm and pointed toward the back of the property, toward the giant dead tree. Then it vanished, just disappeared, as if it had never existed. At that moment, Samarth no longer cared about the challenge. He wanted out. Now. He turned and hurried toward the exit. But as he reached the back door, he noticed something strange near the tree. The ground looked disturbed, freshly disturbed, almost as if something had recently been buried there. Then his flashlight landed on something sticking out of the dirt. A human hand. Samarth stopped breathing. The hand was moving, slowly, as if something beneath the ground was trying to crawl out. Samarth couldn't move. The hand continued pushing its way out of the dirt, slowly, painfully, as if something buried beneath the ground was fighting to escape. His flashlight shook violently in his hand. Then the soil began to shift. More dirt collapsed inward, and a head emerged from the grave. Samarth's heart nearly stopped. The face was covered in mud. The skin was pale, rotting, decaying. But there was no mistaking it. The corpse had his face, his eyes, his hair. It was him. It was Samarth. For several seconds, his brain refused to accept what he was seeing. This had to be a nightmare, a hallucination, anything but reality. Then the corpse opened its eyes and looked directly at him. A raspy voice escaped its mouth. One word. Run. Before Samarth could react, a terrifying scream exploded from inside the mansion. The sound was so loud that it seemed to shake the entire property. Then came another scream, and another, followed by the sound of 2 men shouting at each other, the same argument, over and over again, like a recording trapped in time. Suddenly, 2 figures appeared in the darkness near the house. At first they looked human. Then Samarth saw their faces. His blood ran cold. One man's chest was covered in deep stab wounds. The other's throat was torn open. Their bodies were twisted and rotten, and their glowing eyes were locked on him. The DeMelo brothers, the house's most famous ghosts, and now they were staring directly at him. The brothers began walking toward him, slowly. Neither of them blinked. Neither looked away. Samarth turned and ran, but after only a few steps, something grabbed his ankle. He looked down. The corpse with his face had seized his leg. Its fingers dug into his skin like iron hooks. Then it pulled. The ground beneath him suddenly gave way. Dirt collapsed around his body. It felt as if dozens of unseen hands were dragging him underground. Samarth screamed. He clawed at the earth, fought with everything he had. But the harder he struggled, the deeper he sank. The brothers continued approaching, closer, closer, until they were only a few feet away. Their mouths slowly opened, and together they whispered, "You belong here." The last thing Samarth saw was their rotting faces leaning over him. Then everything went black. The next morning, his friends arrived at the DeMelo House. After hours of searching, they found him half buried outside near the dead tree, barely alive. They pulled him free and rushed him to a hospital. When Samarth finally woke up, he told them everything. The house, the grave, the corpse, the brothers. None of them believed him. They assumed he had suffered some kind of panic attack, maybe even a nightmare. But then Rahul remembered the phone Samarth had been clutching when they found him. They opened the gallery and immediately fell silent. There was only one photograph, just one. The image showed the upstairs window of the DeMelo House. Standing inside were the two dead brothers, watching the camera. But they weren't alone. A third figure stood between them, a young man covered in dirt, staring directly at the lens. It was Samarth. The problem was, the photo had been taken at 5:32 a.m. At exactly that time, Samarth had already been found unconscious outside the house. The picture should not have existed. Nobody could explain it. Years have passed since that night. Samarth never returned to Goa. He rarely speaks about what happened. But Rahul still keeps the photograph. And according to him, something in the image changes every year. Very slowly. Almost impossible to notice at first, but enough to be terrifying. Because every year, the face standing between the DeMelo brothers looks a little more decayed, a little less human, as if part of Samarth never escaped the DeMelo house, and maybe it never will.